Hello and welcome to the Two Man Power Trip of Wrestling. I'm your host, JP John Paz. With me today, a very special guest, former CZW World Heavyweight Champion, former XPW Heavyweight Champion, of course, Billy Welsh, aka the Messiah. Welcome to the Two Man Power Trip. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, John. Thanks for having me, man.
I know you don't like the Messiah name. I know you're not you're not a fan of that.
Yeah, well, it's not that I'm not a fan of it. It's just it comes off pretentious, you know, like
Oh, just a little, yeah.
just a little. But I mean, like I remember, not to name drop or whatever, but like Sabu telling me, always use your gimmick name because Sabu didn't like being called it Terry.
Yep.
And I distinctly have this memory of an XPW. I want to say it was like Excalibur and maybe Super Dragon. I introduced myself as Messiah, and later on, Excalibur was like, "Yeah, we thought you were an a-hole because you're like I'm Messiah." I was like, "Yeah, of course." So
Yeah.
just call me Billy. My name's Billy.
Not the Messiah. Yeah. But
Yeah,
cool name though. Cool gimmick. Yeah, for sure. So what's going on in your world? What have you been up to?
nothing. Just working, getting done with Christmas like everybody else, getting ready for New Year's, and um, yeah, just being the family guy, I guess. The normal thing. Yeah. How about you?
Same old, same old, same thing. I was off from work, so it's pretty much just hanging out, getting, hanging out with the kids, getting Christmas stuff put away now. It's funny, like when you have kids and they get the stuff for Christmas, you got to throw out all the old stuff and you got to
Yeah.
make room for the new. So that's basically what we've been doing. Took a few days off.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we don't do that in my house. Everything gets hoarded. So
Yeah, my wife won't let that happen for whatever
yeah,
reason. With the kid stuff, especially, she won't let that happen. But any
yeah.
wrestling stuff you're doing, or no more wrestling stuff?
No wrestling stuff. I mean, I did a thing for Danny Demento back in October for his promotion. They were out here in LA, and I just did like a little guest appearance, which was cool. You know, it reminded me how much I miss being around the locker room, around everybody, and it was cool meeting new people and catching up with some guys I haven't seen in years. Um, but overall, no. I mean, I get asked to do things. Unfortunately, I turned down the majority of it. I mean, you saw it was difficult for me just to get on the podcast. It was like, sorry, I can't do it this week, or I lost my
Yeah.
voice. It's like, um, uh, I don't realize how much I miss being around it until I'm back in it, like around the locker room and everything. Because honestly, I just got used to being home, and I love being home. I grew to hate traveling. Absolutely hated it. And again, I never meant to stop wrestling. It just kind of happened.
So when you were with Danny Demento, did you wrestle at all, or is it just an appearance?
No, he just wanted me to do an appearance. That was it. It was like he wanted me to do like a run-in kind of thing. And ultimately, when anybody asked me, like, "Hey, can you come in and do this?" They usually say, "You don't have to wrestle. We just like to have you, come here and be around them." Like, yeah, but no one's going to know who the hell I am. And Danny's like, "No, people are gonna know who you are." I was like, "Okay." And I went, and surprising enough, like I was very surprised. People remembered me, and it was actually really nice. And I enjoyed it. Like I said, I enjoyed being around it, seeing everybody, meeting new people, and just catching up with old friends that I haven't seen in years.
That's pretty cool though to get recognized. You were thinking you were that people are going to forget you, but that's pretty cool. It's like, oh shit, the Messiah is here. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's not like, I mean, I get recognized like in those circles, outside. Like I can count on one hand how many times I've ever been recognized outside of wrestling. You know what I mean? So, good. I don't know how guys deal with that because my wife has even pointed out to me I get all weird when someone's like, "Hey, weren't you Messiah or aren't you Messiah?" It's like, I don't deal with that very well. Not that I'm a dick, but I become the recluse, shy introvert that, that I really am, and I'm just
Mm.
like, oh no, that's not me. It just feels weird to me. But I do miss it. I don't miss the bumps and dealing with that stuff because ultimately that's why I stopped wrestling. I just had so many injuries that I never took care of, and I just got used to being home. And when people would ask for me to wrestle, I would politely decline. And there just comes a point when people stop asking, and I'm cool with that. And I made my peace with that. It didn't bug me as much as I thought it would. Uh, but yeah, I do miss it to a certain extent, though.
Do you think that you could wrestle now? Like you wouldn't be retired necessarily? Could you come back and wrestle?
I don't know. The biggest injury I had was I blew up my back. I was living in Houston at the time, and I was doing shows in Dallas, like every week. And I drive up to Dallas. That's where I met like Masada for the first time. It was for a promotion called XCW. I believe Keith Lee was there as well. It was a really good promotion, but rather than stay the night, I would get in my car and drive home because I like to be home. And being in a car for 5 hours, and me doing my springboard leg drops and that kind of crap, it wasn't doing me any favors. And as soon as I got home, like at 6 a.m. or something like that, I couldn't go to sleep. So I just went in the backyard and started doing some yard work. And I went to move a potted plant. And I felt this, to me, it sounded like a gunshot, but it was just like this huge pop. And I collapsed and I couldn't move. And ever since then, my back has never been the same. When I would wrestle after that, it's hard for me to explain. I mean, I'm sure people understand, but like when I would wrestle, I didn't wrestle with, oh, I shouldn't do this, or I should be careful to do this move because I might hurt my back or I might hurt my knee. It never crossed my mind. But when that injury happened, I would be in the ring, and just to do something, just whatever, a sit out, whatever, I'd have like a second thought in my head, and I'd get through the match and I'd be fine. And then I'd jump out of the ring, and then my back would go out of me again. And it wasn't as severe. Nothing has been as severe as the first time it happened, but still, it was just, it would just go out for no reason. And I know why I have the injury. It's from all the springboard leg drops I used to do, and just landing on your butt constantly. I mean, I know exactly why. And it messed with my brain. Say you could mess with my confidence it did. It messed with my confidence. So on top of like, an old knee injury, my shoulders all messed up, my neck, I mean, just all the usual aches and pains all pro wrestlers have, I guess. And I just got used to being home. And as much as I'd like to wrestle, and even like Danny Demento and his promotion for No Holds Barred Wrestling, like he's asked me if I want to do stuff. I'd feel comfortable doing something in a tag setting, but like the last match I can remember having, I wrestled Supreme for a promotion out here in California. I think it was called Mex Pro, but I had no business being in the ring. I can honestly say that I had no business being in there, because all I was thinking about was, don't do this, don't do that. You're going to screw your back up again. And it definitely wasn't a match that I'm proud of. I mean, ultimately, I hate every match I have, because I always know I can do better. I should have done this or do that. But that one was like, dude, I had no business being in there. And the only reason I did it was because I wanted to be around my friends and get back to wrestling, and being around the locker room and seeing Supreme and Chaos and all the guys I knew from XPW. But dude, it was a horrible match. Not on Supreme's part, but on my part. I mean, maybe if I buckled down and worked on my back and did like exercises like I should be doing, probably I could. But my answer for my long answer to go around is probably no. Because like I said, it's a confidence thing, man. It's in the back of my head that I'm just going to screw myself up.
Feels like Game Changer Wrestling always brings in like big time legends, deathmatch guys. I don't know. Maybe you could do something with. They're kind of like one of the top three now. If
Yeah.
you think about it, probably the top indie. I feel like Brett could probably bring you in, and it would be something cool, and maybe not kill yourself. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
be
Well,
appreciated there.
I did a thing for Game Changer. I was part of. I did a run-in on the Nick Gage David Arquette match.
Oh right. Oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Okay.
And like no one. That's why when I would tell like people, no one's going to know who I am, because no one knew who the hell I was. There was like a little mattering of like, but no one knew who the hell I was. No one did. But I had fun doing it. But yeah, I probably could. I mean, again, if I applied myself and really, because like even now, I just turned 45, so it's like I mean, my wife can tell you, I get up in the morning and it's like I'm limping.
Yeah.
I just got to start getting my stride back. I got to do stupid like crunches or stretches for my back so I can just go through the day sometimes. But again, I know myself too well that even though I have that doubt in my head, and even though I have that little voice in my head saying, don't do this, I would still do the stuff that I used to do.
Yeah. Yep.
It would,
Can't help yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't help myself. So, I think, cause I know that Brett's asked me to, when they do like the Deathmatch Hall of Fame, like every year. And, last year he didn't ask me, but like the 2 previous years cause there was nothing during COVID, but the 2 years before that, he would ask me like, hey, I'll fly you out to New Jersey to put you in the Deathmatch Hall of Fame. And I've unfortunately had to decline both times. Like that would be cool. As much as I would want to wrestle, I honestly just don't want to stink up the joint. That's the bottom line. I just don't want to stink up the joint.
Hey, get in there with, I don't know, maybe Nick Gage. I don't know, somebody that, maybe they could carry the bulk of the work. You would hope.
Yeah, no, like Nikki and I have wrestled, numerous times, and like, I'm in awe of Nick Gage, just his mentality for what he does and for wrestling. And like, he's balls to the wall, and the connection he has with his fans and just the fans in general. I mean, if you could bottle that, if WWE could bottle that, like they'd be 100 times over than they already are. Any promotion would be 100 times over. Like that's incredibly, incredibly special. And when I watch Nikki, I'm just in awe of that. And I know Nikki well enough to know if I wrestled him, he'd go, hey, let's do this, 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 and this. And it's like stuff I know I shouldn't do, but I'd still do it. Yeah. But Nikki will just push me to do those things. So
then you really won't be able to get out of bed.
Yeah, pretty much. It'd be worth it, though.
How would you explain that, though, the popularity of Nick Gage? Talking about him, isn't it crazy? Just looking at him, you wouldn't say like, oh, this guy's got, this charisma, he's so popular, but he is.
No, dude, I mean, if I could explain it, I'd still be wrestling right now, probably. It's an authenticity. Nick Gage is Nick Gage. It's not a gimmick. It's not a character. Nikki is Nikki. I mean, I can distinctly remember him telling me, I'm going to do this until I die. Like he just, that's his mentality. And I think the fans and people, fans, they want something real. Whether it was like Steve Austin in WWE, that was Steve Austin, they say dialed up to 11, but they want, someone who's real. And Nikki is as real as you can get. And that's not Nikki dialed to 11. That's just Nikki. He's always like that. I think fans they just know he's authentic. And when someone's authentic, you can get behind him. And when he says, I love you, motherfuckers, he means it. He's grateful for every single fan. And I think that's awesome. I wish, if that's something that could be taught, Nikki would be a millionaire 100 times over, because that is something that every pro wrestler needs, is what he has, is just that authenticity, that the realness. He's just genuine. A lot of guys, it's pro wrestling. You're being a gimmick, or you're being a character. Nikki just was able to find who he was, and people love him for it.
I'm not a huge deathmatch guy, but me and my buddy used to go to every year CZW Cage of Death, pretty much. Like we would always go to Cage of Death. We always were a fan of you, and of course Necro Butcher. I don't know why, and I just talked to him not that long ago. I said I don't know why, but for some reason, like you give him a pass. We're like, I love Necro Butcher. Oh, that was really stupid. Should do that. But you just give him a pass. You know what I mean? There's some guys who are like, oh, I love this guy. He's nuts. But it was like almost the same thing with Gage. It's like, why is this guy over? Like, what the hell?
Because there is something about like someone who literally is like Nikki literally almost died wrestling.
Yep.
And you would think that would slow someone down. The only thing that slowed Nikki down was going to prison. That was the only thing. And when he came out, he was even more popular. It's like that. It's like the whole rapper mentality of, having street cred or whatever it is you want to call it.
Yeah. Yep.
People loved him even more because, he made no apologies and like, hey, I did this. I served my time and now I'm back. I think Necro gets the popularity just because he's legitimately one tough son of a bitch. and he puts his body through hell. I mean, like I've seen like a TV get thrown in his head. He's outside the ring. Someone threw like a TV, like a full. The guts were still inside the TV. They threw a TV at him, and he just hit him right. Like, that's insane. You know what I mean? I think fans love Necro just because Necro is authentic. That's who he really is. And, you know, he will literally almost die. I mean, he almost had his arm amputated in a match one time, if I remember right. I think it was an IWA. He went through like a log tube of light tubes. And it like, you know, light tubes, dude, it'll cut through you like butter. People forget that. That's why I didn't like doing light tubes, man. But he's authentic. I think there's something to be said when someone's authentic, and the fans can respond to that.
The light tubes, those little pieces of like the fiber or whatever it is.
Yeah,
man, you can't get them out. Yeah,
no, they're horrible. I mean, I know I get the I'm considered like a deathmatch guy. I've never considered myself a deathmatch guy, especially when you consider what the guys do today. They're nuts.
Yeah,
and a lot of these guys, you know, like a promotion like Danny Demento has for No Holds Barred Wrestling, they do shows like every week, man. Like deathmatch shows every week. It's not like you do a deathmatch once a month. These guys are doing it every week, you know, a couple times a week sometimes. That's intense, and that's just insane to me. You know, I'm labeled the deathmatch guy, and that's fine, and that's cool. I've always considered myself more of like, you want to say I was hardcore or extreme? Absolutely. Because, you know, I grew up with the ECW influence. You know, those weren't deathmatch guys. They were hardcore and extreme. So that's where I label myself more than the deathmatch, even though I have done death matches. And luckily, some of the death matches I've done are more memorable than most death matches that have been done, especially the ones I've done with Mondo. But to put your body through that constantly, especially if you're doing it every week, you know, that's someone who has a love for the business. And you're also, you know, a little sick in the head, which, yes, whatever, you know, to be a pro wrestler, you have to be a little sick in the head anyway. But yeah, to constantly do that to yourself, I mean, that's dedication that is, you know, that's intense. And I have nothing but respect for the guys and girls now that do that. But it's just craziness when I really think about it, especially now that I'm 45. It's like, you know, Luke Hawks and I have talked about it, or and Joey, like the stupid crap we used to do when we were young, man. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like everything just to get a pop. You just want to get a pop off the crowd. But, you know, I look back on it now. I'm not regretful of anything, or I wish I hadn't done this in this match or anything like that. You know, how do I wish I had like stretched out a little bit more? Yeah, of course. But, you know, when I look back on it, it's, you know, it's nothing but good memories. But to the guys who did death matches now, you guys are nuts. They're just insane. And yeah, I can't be doing that stuff, man.
Yeah. I always considered you to be kind of like the, you know, like Shane Douglas was in ECW, where it's like, okay, here's the normal guy. He could do that other stuff, but he's kind of like the normal badass, like heel guy you kind of look up to and want to be, while all these nut jobs are around him. That's how I always kind of pictured you in CZW. It's like, all right, Nick Gage is nuts, Necro Butcher's nuts. So like, he could do crazy stuff, but Messiah's like the guy you kind of aspire to be. Like, he could do that stuff, but he doesn't necessarily have to do that stuff all the time, you know? That kind of wrestler.
No, I appreciate that. That's thank you very much. And that's how I always felt. Again, I never said no to anything. Like, if you wanted me to do a death match, I'll do it. Now, there's been times where it's like, hey, can you get color? I'm like, no, there's no need to get color in this. He's going to get color. We're going to get cut up because we're doing this stuff. There's no reason I need to get color on top of it. It's beating a dead horse. Because I grew up in the business or I was taught, like, you know, color's supposed to mean something. And also, you know, I don't want to fuck up my face any more than I already have.
Yeah.
So, yep. You know, I want to keep whatever looks I have now. So it's like, yeah, I'm not, yeah, it's good. You know, my back's going to get all cut up in this. It's cool. I don't need to cut up my face for doing this.
You should talk to John Moxley, because he gets color in every match. I don't know why. It'll be like a normal 5-minute Rampage match for AEW, and he's bleeding. It's like, why? Why do that? I don't get that. I never understood it. I can understand if it's a big main event or a
Yeah.
big or something, but like a 5-minute Rampage match on Friday night, like I don't know.
Again, it's a level of dedication, man, and especially if you know how to bleed, because there are secrets to doing it where you don't even need to like really slice yourself. It's just like a little prick, and with your your adrenaline going and you're sweating, and if you take a couple aspirins beforehand, it'll flow. And again, and once you're done and you've cooled off and everything's cool, you don't even have you've got like a little mark. That's it.
Yep.
Like I remember one time. I remember one time Rob Black, he got color in XPW, and I guess it was I want to say, I guess he asked Bubba Ray Dudley how to do it, and Bubba Ray told him how to do it. When he got color, he had all these lines like from the razor blade like this, and they weren't deep. They were just look like a cat clawed out.
Yeah. Yep.
And I remember Supreme was just staring at him, and Supreme just looked at him and went, "Who told you to do that?" And he goes, no, Bubba Ray like told me. He goes, oh, okay. And Rob's like, why? He goes, because it looks like you don't know what the fuck you're doing. It was just the funniest thing. And it's like, you don't need to like really gouge yourself. You just a little, little scratch right there, or a little, because I know like Chaos Joey, he'll stick it in because Vampiro taught him. He goes like this and he just twists. That's it. Just a little twist. And you get a bunch of color off it, and you're not like scarring yourself up for life. Because like a guy like Chaos, like Joey, if he got scratched by a cat on the forehead, he has a scar. It just, his skin was that delicate. Whereas I was very lucky. I could like gouge myself. I mean, I busted my eye open a couple of years back at work. Like you could fit 2 fingers in here, and I needed like 20 some odd stitches, and you can't even see it anymore. I'm just one of the lucky guys who I don't get that scarred up.
Yeah, I feel like some guys, like Dusty, you could see his forehead, or guys like that. Yeah, it's gross.
Yeah, I never wanted to be like Abdul the Butcher and be able to put like a quarter in it. Like I don't want that stuff. You know?
My buddy PJ, Justin Credible, I used to take him to all the shows and stuff. We went to a bunch of CZW shows together. Obviously, he's in the ring. I'm outside the ring, but he would show me. I'm like, oh, I thought you bladed tonight, but he would show me. He only did a little bit, and then like it got all over the place. So smartly didn't like ruin his forehead like some of the old school guys.
Yeah, and again, like the old school guys, those are guys who were working, like guys like Dusty and Ric Flair, and like those guys are working 7 days a week, twice on Sunday kind of deal. You're not even giving it a chance, like you're not even giving your head a chance to heal. Like Steve Corino, if you watched him in ECW, he was always getting color. It was always like just this like baby pink on his forehead, because it was just constantly being opened back up. It was constantly being busted back open. I never wanted that, because there's life after wrestling, and I wanted to get married one day.
Yes. Yeah, instead of like her looking like, what the hell happened to your face? Like,
yeah. There comes,
it's,
there comes, maybe it would be different if I had made my living off of wrestling, because it's like, hey, this is how I make my living, but when you're not making your living off it and you're screwing your face up like that, I know my wife would just be like, you're an idiot. You're a friggin' idiot. Like, why did I even marry you? That's the dumbest thing in the world.
So you mentioned XPW, you mentioned Rob Black. You did the Dark Side of the Ring episode. Obviously, you were talking about that stuff. How'd you get into XPW to begin with? I know you were basically wrestling and they kind of recruited you, or how'd you get into XPW?
At the time, I had started wrestling in a promotion called Slammers Wrestling Federation. They had a school called Slam U. That's where I met like White Trash Johnny Webb there, Homeless Jimmy, Carlito Montana, who wrestled as Hombre de Oro and Slammers, but he wrestled. Carlito Montana was in XPW as well, but I had left Slammers, and as much as I liked Slammers and I learned a lot there, Slammers was a great place to learn how to work, not how to get work. The owner, Vern Langdon, didn't want anybody ever to leave. Like, why do you want to go anywhere? We're great here. It's like, and I had just kind of got burnt out on it. For a short time, I had left the state of California. I had moved up to Georgia for like 6 months or whatever it was, and I had moved back. But during that time, I was always in contact with my trainer, Carlos. When I had moved back, Carlos and I were talking, and he was telling me how he was going to be wrestling for this new promotion, and they had a gimmick for him and everything, and he was really excited about it, and I was happy for him. And then fast forward to like, whatever, that Monday, I'm watching Monday Night Raw, and there's these commercials for XPW. And as I'm watching it, I notice, I'm like, wait, there's White Trash Johnny Webb. Oh, wait, he's with Missy Hyatt? Like, what the? And then there's Homeless Jimmy. I'm like, oh, there's Dynamite D. I know Dynamite D. Like, what the? So I'm like, I know all these guys. I call up Carlos however many days later. I start talking to him, and I'm like, dude, I just saw this commercial for this promotion called XPW. All the guys we wrestled with at Slammers are there. He goes, dude, that's the promotion I'm going to work for. And I was like, oh, that's great. And then he brought up brought up that my name had been brought up amongst the boys. But he didn't want to tell them anything, or he didn't say anything, because he's like, dude, I don't want to put out your business. I didn't know if you still wanted to wrestle. And I was like, yeah, of course I do. So, I went to a practice the following week, because XPW, we always had practices on Tuesday. And then we would have like a company meeting after the practice. I went to the practice with Carlos, and I hadn't wrestled like in a year. But as we're about to walk in, Carlos then drops the bomb on me. Oh, just so you know, they film adult movies here. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I didn't care. I'm like, whatever. And he goes, and also I think the owners are Jewish, so don't say any Jewish jokes. I was like, I don't do Jewish jokes, but okay, thanks for warning me. Like, whatever.
Yep.
Go in there, and sure enough, I walk in there and I see like Dynamite D and everything. And I had, out of Slammers, I had only done one indie ever. I can't even remember the name of it. But I initially met Supreme and Chaos at that indie. So when I walked into XPW, I saw Supreme and Chaos there. I was like, dude, what's up, guys? And we started talking and everything. And sorry, fast forward. When Carlos told me that he was going to be debuting a new gimmick, before I ever went to that first training session, I purposely went to the XPW show that Carlos was going to debut on. I paid a ticket. I stood in line and paid a ticket with everybody, with all the fans, watched the show, and thought it was great, thought it was awesome. Waited after the show and saw Dynamite D, and he recognized me, and we started talking. And then the following week is when I went to that initial training session and started training with the guys, started bumping around, having a good time. At some point, I wanted to go to the bathroom or get like some water or something like that. And I didn't know my way around the building. So I go into this office, or open this door, and in the office, it just pitch black, the lights are off. All I see is the silhouette of some dude leaning back on a chair on the phone with these huge boots that are like got heels like this, thick, with, dreadlock, moss green hair or whatever. And I walked in and I went, oh, I'm sorry, looking for the bathroom, sorry. And I just closed the door and left. After the training session, they're all going in to do the company meeting, and Kevin Kleinrock was there, and I had met Kevin at Slammers as well. Kevin was like, hey, why don't you come in the meeting? And I was like, no, it's okay. I'm not part of the company, because the way I was taught, you go and you shake everybody's hands, I'm not going to assume anything. So Webb, White Trash Johnny Webb was there. They're like, no, you can come in. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I walked in, all the seats were taken. So I just like squatted on the floor. All of a sudden the office door opens, and the guy that was in what I thought was the bathroom walks in and sits at the main desk, sits down and tells everybody to shut the F up, and looks directly at me and goes, who the fuck are you? And I was like, I'm Billy. I used to wrestle with these guys. And Webb looked at him and goes, no, he's good. He's cool. Don't worry about it. He's cool. Like, all right. All of a sudden it was, that's essentially how I got into XPW. they were talking about that they were going to have, the next show was going to have a battle royal. They needed bodies. I volunteered. I'm like, yeah, you need bodies. I'll do it. Again, I'm just happy to be wrestling, you know, and Kevin Kleinwalk's like, no, put a mask on him. Let's put a mask on him. We don't want to waste him. I'm like, okay. So they put a mask on me, and that's how I became the Blunatic in XPW. It was just, it was a blue mask. So they called me the Blunatic. If it was a pink mask, I would have been called the Pinkatic. Like, it was just, it was a joke gimmick, and I was there to make people look good. That's all it was. And that's how, I mean, that's essentially how I got into XPW. Really wasn't recruited. It was just, they asked about me. I was interested, and I showed up, and I essentially got the job, I guess.
Was that Rob Black who asked, who the fuck are you?
Yeah, Rob Black. He walked in, he just looked at me and goes, who the fuck are you? It's like, sorry, I'm Billy. Yeah. I know these guys from Slammers. And Webb piped up, because at the time, Webb was editing. He was editing for the XPW side and for the Extreme Associate side, the adult side. Right. So Webb was like, no, he's good. Don't worry about him. You know, I don't think, and they talked about it in Dark Side of the Ring. The first show I ever did for XPW was that Battle Royal. And in that Battle Royal, I took a chair shot. And if I remember right, there's like a clip on YouTube, or I mean, like, only I know it's me. You don't even know, like, no one, if you're watching, you're not going to know that, hey, that's Billy. Like, only I know it's me. But in the Battle Royal, they had, like, you know, it was a hardcore Battle Royal, because it was supposed to be like ECW kind of thing. So there were chairs in there, steel chairs. And I went to pick up a steel chair to smack somebody, and White Trash Johnny Webb just took it from me. And I turned around, and he glommed me with it right in the forehead. And I didn't put my hands up or anything. Again, it wasn't a planned spot. It wasn't like Webb and I talked about it in the ring or outside of the ring. It was just instinctual, like, because I had worked with Webb in Slammers. So, and I trusted Webb. So as soon as he took the chair, I turned around, he hit me with it. I didn't put my hands up. You know, I was told later on by Webb that Rob loved it because I didn't put my hands up. Because all the guys were putting their hands up when they were taking chair shots. But I was always taught not to put your hands up, because you're going to break your fingers. You're doing that or whatever, you're just going to break your fingers. In Slammers, we and when I tell people this, they laugh, but it's the truth. We actually had a class on how to take a chair shot.
Wow. Only
because of the fact of Slammers used to do shows at a place called Strongbow Stadium in Bakersfield, California. They used to do them like every Thursday, like 20 people would show up. But in one of these shows, it was Webb and another guy. I think they asked Vern, the owner of Slammers, if they could use a chair. And Vern said, yeah, go for it. And when they went to use the chair, you could tell I believe, I don't know if Webb was giving the chair shots. Because the guy he was wrestling was a guy, his name was Danny, but he wrestled as Felony in XPW. But you could tell, like, they weren't trying to hurt each other with it. It was like very, you know, one guy doesn't know to give his back, or, you know, It was just awkward. And Vern's like, you know, we're doing a class on chair shots, because that's the most disgraceful thing I've ever seen. So we did a class on chair shots, and taking the chair shot wasn't so bad as just the anticipating it, waiting it for it to come. That's where you're like, motherfucker. But getting hit with it wasn't that bad. So that's why when I had the chair shot in the chair in the Battle Royal, and Webb took it, I knew exactly Webb knew what to do with it. But you know, Rob liked it, and I was told that Rob liked the way I threw my punches, because all the other guys were throwing punches. Not that they weren't throwing punches right or incorrectly, but you know, I would cock back my fist and throw a punch. And that came from the fact of when I was at Slammers, my trainer Carlos told me I punch like a pussy. So I was like, really, I worked that whole entire time that I wasn't wrestling for that year. I was literally like walking down the hall of my house, throwing punches at the wall, trying to barely touch it, you know, like doing this constantly. So when I got back into wrestling, all of a sudden, when I would throw a punch, like, you know, it looked like I was killing the guy from what I was told, but I was barely touching him. And Rob liked that. And then, the Lunatic then became, the Messiah, essentially. Because originally they wanted to put me in a tag team called the Moral Crusaders, Luke and Matthew. And basically it would have been like what the, the Right to Censor was in WWE. The Moral Crusaders would have preached against XPW, against the sex and violence and blah, 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 but they would cheat to win, But the tag team, or the guy that they wanted me to tag with, like kind of fell off the face of the earth, from what I was told. No one could get a hold of him. And so I was just going to remain under the blue mask, I guess. And while I was the Lunatic, I was wrestling Nicole Bass on shows and getting dropped on my head like all the time when she'd go for the choke slam. And Nicole was very nice, but she didn't know how to wrestle. She really didn't. And I just finally got the courage to ask for a meeting with Rob. And I asked Rob if I could do the Moral Crusader gimmick as a single. And if somebody fit the bill for the tag team, then you can just tag them up with me and we're good. But I'll just get it started. And Rob looked at me and just went, all right, this is your only shot though. You screw this up, no other chances. And I was like, no, I understand. And I distinctly remember Supreme being in the meeting and Supreme just looking at Rob going, let the kid do it. Just let him do it. Come on, man. Let him do it. What's it going to hurt? And that's essentially how it started. I mean, as far as I knew, I was going to be Luke the Moral Crusader. There was no talk of Messiah or anything like that. And then when I came the following week for practice, Rob walked by me and he went, what's up, Jesus? And I was lacing up my boots and I looked up and went, excuse me? And he's like, Jesus. I'm like, what? And I'm probably being over dramatic when I do this, but in my mind, it always like he had jazz fingers when he said it. He goes, you're going to be Jesus, like that. Yeah. And I was like, no, I can't be Jesus. No. Well, why can't you be Jesus? Dude, I'm Christian. Like I've literally been to Brazil and I've built a church. Like I don't want to be Jesus. And finally, after however many days or whatever it was, I think Kevin Kleinrock, came to my defense and just went to Rob and went, the guy doesn't want to be called Jesus. Cut him a break. He doesn't want to be called Jesus. So I believe it was either going to be the Savior or Messiah. And I didn't care which one it was, as long as it wasn't Jesus. And then ultimately it became Messiah.
Love it. What a name. Like you said, maybe not like someone, but what a cool name. With the chair shot thing though, would you rather break your finger or would you rather a concussion possibly? Or is there a certain way you should be taking it to avoid concussions and head trauma?
The way here, the way I was taught was like, right here, this is the hardest part of the skull. You are fine. Now, considering what we know about concussions and CTE and things like that, that's a falsehood. Your brain isn't protected. It's just not. So yeah, probably, breaking a finger would be ultimately better than taking, the full on headshot. To be honest with you, it used to keep me up at night thinking about CTE because I took some hard chair shots and I've had some nasty concussions. Anyone who does a chair shot now or anything to your head, I don't want to say they're stupid because they're not, but again, when you're young, you have this aura about yourself that you're invincible and nothing can hurt you and whatever. You don't need to take a chair shot. You don't. You take the chair shot to the back. That's fine, whatever. But there's no need to take head chair shots, given what we know now. When I was taught, we didn't know anything about it. This is the hardest part of the skull. This is what you aim for. So that's what I always, I would stick my head out. And that's why I got like a line of scars up here because of friggin' just taking chair shots. Yep. But, you feed your head and you take it, boom. But, that's incorrect. No one should be taking chair shots. Absolutely not.
So the Messiah himself, you and the gimmick and XPW, you go on quite a run. Obviously, King of Deathmatch, you're the world champion. I mean, you become a pretty like important role and a pretty important character. You're beating ex-ECW guys. You had a nice little feud with Sabu and Candido and New Jack. Did you like kind of where you were headed? Because it was almost like fast tracked to, oh shit, Sabu, this legend. I'm beating him in, cage matches, or you're feuding with
Yeah.
guys like that. Were you happy with the progress? I mean, it felt like pretty quick. You were moving up the ranks at XPW.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I tell this to everybody. Dude, I was just ignorant. Like, I didn't know anything about locker room politics. I was just happy to be wrestling, and even more so being wrestling guys that I looked up to. I never thought in a million years I'd wrestle Sabu or Chris Candido or Vampiro, those guys. I never thought I'd be doing that. And I'm extremely grateful and thankful that I was given that opportunity. I don't know why I was put in that position. I don't know. I've always felt like Chaos. I've always felt Chaos was much better than me. And I've told this to him before. There's just the way he moves in the ring. There's like this fluidity he has to himself that I think is absolutely awesome. But the only thing at the time that I think I had over on Chaos was that I was better on the mic than he was at the time. As much of an introvert that I am, because you can ask my wife, I don't go anywhere. I don't like to do anything. When I was younger, if I was dragged to a party, I was the quiet guy in the corner. It's my mentality. But for some reason, I didn't have a problem getting on a microphone and talking. And I think when it came to Chaos and because before I started as Messiah, I came in XPW. Chaos was the one that was like in the main events with like Damian Steele and things like that. And then when I showed up or whatever, for whatever reason, I got put in that position. I think, and ultimately, one of the reasons I think I was put in that position was because I was a local guy. It wasn't like I had to come up from north. So I was able to do promos or skits or whatever at a moment's notice. And then eventually I ended up working at Extreme, as my shoot job. So, I was available 100% of the time now. So I think ultimately that's one of the reasons I was put in that position, not so much my ability, if you want to call it that. But, I was so green and ignorant to the business, I was just happy to be wrestling these guys, man. Wasn't even taking the time to appreciate, what was going on and things like that. I was just happy to be wrestling. And again, the only reason I became like the the Deathmatch champion and the World Heavyweight champion was Sabu had like his manager Josh Lazy in XPW. Rob and Lazy had a falling out. Rob wanted to get Lazy out of the company. So, but the problem was that Sabu, like Lazy was Sabu's handler. Sabu trusted Lazy. So, Rob, the XPW management came up with a way to get rid of Lazy by like doing the whatever it was, like loser leaves XPW thing that was going to happen. And part of that was like getting the belt off of Sabu. So I never even beat Sabu for the title. I beat New Jack for it. He was like a sub for Sabu, which ultimately I think really hurt the title because Sabu busted his butt for like a year, taking that belt to Japan, Mexico, like making it a legitimate World Heavyweight Championship. It was being defended all around the globe. And then he wasn't able to do an XPW show because I think he had a Japan or a commitment in Japan. So they took the belt off him. Sabu didn't know the belt was going to be taken off him. He had no idea.
Was he pissed?
Oh yeah, he was pissed. Because the show before, I believe, what was it? Oh, the show before, yes. I think Sabu and I had a steel cage match at the Grand Olympic Auditorium. Sabu told Rob, hey, just let Billy beat me for the title and then I'll come back, the next show that I'm here, and I'll beat it. I'll get it back. Rob didn't want to do that. Sabu doesn't lay down for anybody. He, especially then, it was like, dude, no, I'm not letting this guy put me over. It was his idea to put me over, but for whatever reason, Rob, put the kibosh on it. He didn't want it to happen. And then the next show, when Sabu wasn't there, I then wrestled New Jack for it and beat New Jack for it. It made no sense. And then when Lazy and I were talking about it after, like however many weeks after, Lazy was telling me that he, Sabu called him up and asked him how the show was going, how the show went. And Lazy like, oh, the show was okay. Yeah, Messiah beat New Jack for the heavyweight title. And New Jack Sabu went, bullshit. Like, he was pissed. He was mad about it. So, I mean, that's the only reason I got the heavyweight title. It was because they wanted to take it off Sabu in order to get rid of Lazy. They didn't want to get rid of Sabu. They wanted Sabu to stay. But Rob knew that would be kind of hard because Sabu was loyal to Lazy.
So when did you start having problems with Rob and getting out? Was it the whole Lizzie Borden thing?
It was around that time. Rob and I didn't have any problems per se. We didn't. I honestly thought like Rob was a good guy. And the one thing like about the Dark Side of the Ring thing was that they cut my answers up so that I had an answer for one thing, and then I had an answer for another thing, and then they cut it up so that it would make it like I was answering the question. It wasn't the full answer, or they'd cut halfway off what I was saying. Because as much of a hit job the piece came off as on Rob, unfortunately, I know for myself, I can't speak for anyone else. I brought up things that Rob did that were good. Rob, when Supreme got burned, he couldn't do his shoot job. He couldn't go to his real job. Rob paid Supreme's salary that whole entire time that he was out, and he couldn't work. Not a lot of people know that. Rob could be a very giving guy when he wanted to be. Now, when you got on his bad side, oh yeah, he'd screw you over 6 ways to Sunday if you could. But Rob also, they asked me if I thought in the Dark Side of the Ring, they asked me if I thought Rob should go to jail, and I said yes, but not because of what happened to me. But also, they cut it up a little bit. I think Rob should have gone to jail just for the fact of, dude, you essentially told the government to come after you, man. What did you think was going to happen?
Right.
Just the ego on you to do that.
Yeah.
Come on, man. But ultimately, do I think he should have gone to jail for the charges? No. Because no one should tell you what you can and cannot view in your own house. That is absolute BS. So I don't think he should have gone to jail on that. Absolutely not. But to go on a TV show and say, yeah, come after me, government, come after me, John Ashcroft. Yeah, you're an idiot. You deserve to go to jail over that. Absolutely. But, Rob and I, we never had any problems until there was a not an issue, but there was this, how can I put this? I ended up, when I was in XPW, I had a lot of stuff going on personally, and I was like 22 or 23, and I was an angry kid, dude. I just was. I didn't have any of my family around me, and I was literally living in a garage, like with no, there was no insulation or anything like that. Just, XPW, that was my life. I worked there. When I wasn't working there, if there was a pay-per-view, we'd go to Rob's house or whatever. I'd hang out with Supreme and Chaos. I had my childhood friends that I lived with, but I never saw them because I was always working. Can you guys go upstairs, please? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Rob and I, we ended up, I'm trying to remember what the issue was, but basically, I honestly, I didn't want to work there anymore. And the reason for it was because of Lizzie. I didn't want to work there anymore. And also my body was beat up. Like even back then, I mean, I waking up just with the aches and pains and stuff like that. And I don't think I've ever told anybody this, but there were times when I would go to XPW, when I'd go to the Extreme Associates office, and dude, I'd be there like at 12 in the afternoon, and I'd go to the liquor store down the street and get like a 40 or something and bring it back and just drink it at the office. You know, wow. Like I didn't like being there. And there came an instance where I believe it was Joey Chaos's wife, Jezebel. She worked at before they got married, and I don't even know if she remembers this, but I was working, or she was like working the front desk, and Rob asked for like a binder or something like that. And part of what I had to do there, like he wanted me to organize like this room with all these binders with just like pictures from the adult movies and stuff like that they would take. And she took a binder, but didn't put it back in the spot where it was supposed to go. So I like blew up at her over it. It was the dumbest, stupidest thing. And she went to Rob and it's like, Billy just yelled at me. And Rob came to me and was like, did you just yell at so-and-so? I was like, no, I didn't yell at her. You mean to tell me you didn't yell at her? No, I didn't yell at her. Okay, so everybody in this office is telling me that you yelled, but you're telling me you didn't. So everyone here's a liar. Yeah, everyone here's a liar, Rob. Yeah, everyone's a liar. And then I finally went, okay, Rob, I didn't yell. And then I started yelling and said, this is me yelling. Now I am yelling. Again, had nothing to do with her, had nothing to do with Rob. I was just a dickhead 23-year-old kid going through a lot of shit. And I took it out on them and I shouldn't have. Rob, I remember Rob just walked away shaking his head. Later that night, I spoke to Lizzie on the phone and she said, Rob was like, Billy doesn't like me. Billy doesn't like me. I was like, no, of course I like Rob. I like Rob. He thinks you don't like him. I just wasn't in a good place being there. I just wasn't. And it's no fault of Rob or anything like that. I'm not putting any fault on him. But there was also an instance where XPW put out a calendar. And Rob was looking through the calendar. We're in his office. It was me, Kevin Kleinrock. I think the guy who put out the calendar, I don't remember his name, the guy who actually put out the calendar. And Rob's looking through the calendar. And then Rob made a snide remark about, there's Billy and my girlfriend. Because Lizzie and I were paired together at XPW. So, of course, we took like promo shots together. And I just blew up at Rob and went, then get rid of the fucking picture. Again, wasn't meant to be directed at Rob. You know, he said a little snide remark. So then I came back at him like I shouldn't have done that. He's my boss. And I remember Rob just looking up at me, looked back down, closed it, then walked out of the office. And I think Kevin was like, what's he all mad about? And I just looked at Kevin. I said, it's what I said. And the guy who was, whoever was the guy who made the calendar, I can't remember his name, who was friends with Rob, was like, no, it's what Billy said. Dude, I knew I had to get out of there. I just did. So, were there problems? No. Rob and we didn't get into it until after I left, until after I was fired. But, a few weeks before I had gotten fired is when those instances of me giving attitude, whatever you want to call it, being a dickhead, whatever you want to call it, happened. And I knew I had to get out of there. It just wasn't a good environment for me mentally. Again, like I said, I was 23, didn't have my family around me, was living in a fucking garage, had a piece of shit Ford Tempo I was driving around in. Like, my life wasn't looking good. And the only time I was happy was when I was wrestling. And, you know, those were few and far between when we ran shows. So I wasn't happy a whole lot, unfortunately.
So after you get fired, is that when you got your attacked at your home? And
Yeah.
obviously they went after your finger. That's after the fact?
Yeah. Yeah. That was after. It was about a year after I'd gotten fired. I had gotten attacked.
Do you blame Rob for that? Was he responsible? Do we even know who was responsible?
My mind, it was Rob. Rob sent those guys. Again, I know Rob will say he had nothing to do with it, or there was things put out saying that I owed money to people. I didn't owe money to anybody. I had no money. Like I didn't owe money to anybody, man.
Right.
I didn't have a gambling problem. Didn't have a drug problem. Don't have a drinking problem. I even read a thing. I mean, it was the most ridiculous thing, but like someone told me, not. I can't remember who wrote it. It was on some message board, but basically saying like, I know for a fact Messiah lives in a Jewish community and they don't like that he's Messiah. Basically saying I got the hit put on me because I wrestled as Messiah.
Right.
By a bunch of like the Jewish mafia or something. I don't know. Like it was the dumbest thing in the world. But yeah, there's just too many coincidences that point the finger at Rob. You know, given the fact that, you know, a week prior, White Trash Johnny Webb called me and told me to be careful, to watch out for myself because Rob was in one of his tears regarding me. Yeah, I mean, as soon as those guys showed up, I knew exactly why they were there and who sent them.
He has denied it, of course. I mean, otherwise he'd be in jail. But yeah, he has denied it.
As far as I know, I mean, again, I don't even know if he's ever came out and said I had nothing to do with this. Like he's never said that. As far as I know when I spoke to the producers of Dark Side of the Ring, they had told me that they had contacted Rob and Rob declined.
Yep.
And the reason that Rob had declined was because they knew they would bring up what happened to me. And I don't think Rob wanted to be put in a position to say anything about it because, you know, Rob loves publicity, good or bad. You know, he doesn't care. He loves publicity. So I was kind of surprised that Rob didn't do Dark Side of the Ring because he doesn't care how he's going to come off. If you know, and he was on I believe he was relaunching XPW when Dark Side of the Ring came out. Like he was getting ready to relaunch XPW.
Yep.
So that's even better publicity. So, you know, it surprised me that Rob wasn't on Dark Side of the Ring because he doesn't give a shit. Again, this is the guy who challenged John Ashcroft to come after him. Like, what does he care? Like,
yep.
So, but as far as I know, he's never straight up said I had nothing to do with it.
But you definitely think I mean, odds are he did.
In my heart of hearts, yeah. Because again, nothing else has ever happened to me. I've never had like, you know, anything else ever happen. You know, and I know people ask like, why wasn't he charged or questioned or anything like that? When I spoke to the sheriff, and I can't remember his name, but the guy who was in charge of the investigation, he and I called a couple times or talked to, you know, a handful of times. And at the time, when I had gotten attacked, I had, you know, however many months later, whatever it was, like I ended up moving to Philadelphia. I lived in Philly. So it wasn't like I was in California being able to go and like stop by the sheriff and go, hey, what's up, man? What's going on? Like, and at the same time, I've never been one of these people who harp on things or, you know, I just got on with my life. You know, I'm not going to let this stop me doing what I want to do. I'm not going to let this consume my every waking thought about what happened to me. I can't live that way. I'm not that way. I'm not built that way. So when I would speak to him every couple months, you know, we had one conversation where he just straight up said, you know, I can get Rob Black. I can question him. I can talk to him. What is he going to tell me? I had nothing to do with this. He goes, you and I both know Rob was responsible for this. But, you know, it's not like Rob walked in and did it himself. Two guys showed up. And honestly, it was probably two guys Rob had never met before, never knew. there was nothing linking Rob to it. There just wasn't. And I completely understood that. And then the last conversation I had with the detective was, he was told from higher ups to lay off Rob because at the time, I think Rob had already gotten raided. I believe he had already gotten raided, I think. So it was like, yeah, just back off him. And I understood it. I didn't press the issue. Again, I was living my life. I was off doing what I wanted to do. And I understand if that's hard for some people to understand. Like, why wasn't I calling every week for an update and things like that? I've just never been that way. I'm not built that way. If someone got caught, someone got caught. Awesome. The biggest FU I could give to Rob and the guys who did this or people who were glad this happened to me was to continue wrestling and continue living my life and show that it didn't affect me. And that's what I did.
Yeah, you moved to Philly and joined CZW. You get to work for another crazy bastard, John Zandig.
Yep.
Right? You go from one nut job to the other.
Yep.
Man, what was Zandig like? Because he's just, obviously we've seen him wrestle, we've seen him cut promos, but what's he like as a person? He just seems like a nutty dude.
John's a great guy. I know now, like if you go to like his Facebook and like, so like he's a full on like Trump was robbed, kind of guy,
Yes.
The John Zandig I knew was an extremely likable, nice, loving guy. Would do anything to help out one of the boys, and did on a lot of occasions. But but John was also, he'd go, hey, I got this idea for this spot that you can do during the Cage of Death. John wouldn't ask you to do anything that he wasn't willing to do.
Right.
I mean, the guy hung himself twice, from meat hooks.
Yep.
So, he's insane, but he's a great guy that he just wanted to always push the boundaries or up the ante on things all the time. And I always admired that about him and always dug that about him as well. But I always thought John was a great guy. He can be a little bit intense at times, and he'll also play down things. Like the first time I ever spoke to John on the phone when he called me up, essentially was like, yeah, hey, I don't know who you are. Never heard of you. But a couple of my guys have heard of you, said you can work. You want to come out and wrestle? Like, oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah, great vote of confidence.
Yeah, okay. He always likes to play things down.
Probably didn't want to pay you as much. Like, oh, I know.
Probably, that's exactly what he did. Yeah, that's probably exactly what it was too.
Yeah. So I know I mentioned to this when we were briefly talking a while ago. So we're at Cage of Death. I believe it's Cage of Death 6, 2004-ish, I believe it was. You win a match. I think it's Adam Flash, yourself.
And Chaos?
I think it was Chaos. Yes.
Oh, yeah, that match was horrible.
It was a scaffold match. It was a ladder match. So much going on. But you win, right? And afterwards, Zandig gets on and starts cutting a promo. He has nothing to do with the match, nothing to do with anything. But he gets on. He goes, Messiah. Me and my buddy still. I mean, this is almost 20 years ago. Me and my buddy still laugh about it today. He goes, Messiah. We're like, oh, great. Zandig's going to start feuding with Messiah over the title. He goes, I'm sorry. And we're like, what the fuck is he getting at? He goes, I'm sorry, Championship Leather screwed me, and they screwed you because I would have had a new CZW World Title belt for you. I'm sorry. Do you remember that at all? Because I know I can't get out of my head. It's so funny. It's like, why would the owner of the company bring that up during a huge match where the champion just won? Just retained the title. Like, why? What the hell?
He would. I do remember that. There was one time when Chaos debuted in CZW, he was supposed to debut before, he was supposed to not jump ship to CZW, but when before XPW ever came to Philly, John wanted to bring I believe the storyline was somebody from Messiah's past, blah blah blah, and it was going to be Chaos. I was going to wrestle Chaos, and I spoke to him. Chaos spoke to John. It was a done deal. Raw Black finds out and puts the kibosh on it. It's like, hey, you go wrestle over there. You're not wrestling here.
Right.
Okay, so Joey's not going to do it. Fast forward to, I believe it was the match where Justice Payne had returned to CZW after leaving to go to XPW. I wrestled Payne, went over on Payne, and the match is over. All of a sudden, I feel like a tap on my shoulder. I turn around, and it's chaos. And then he just starts, firing up on me. I had no idea Joey was there. Like, it was a complete and total shoot. It was a rib on me because, Joey gets on me, then, calls to me to do whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then I think John just gets on the mic and starts laughing. Like, like, I had no idea Joey was there. And then I grabbed the mic and was just like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. This is a shoot. You guys are trying to pull ribs on me. Like, I wasn't legitimately pissed. I was a little bit pissed only because I could have done more with Joey had I known he was there. Like, we could have set up some. But I get to the back and John is laughing his ass off. Joey, everybody's laughing their ass off. And I'm happy to see my friend. But it's like, that's how John was. He'll just grab the mic in the middle of your match. Hey, screw this. We're not doing this. Now it's 2 out of 3 falls. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure. Like, that's just the way that's the way he was. It's my promotion. I can do what I want kind of thing. It's like, okay, cool.
Yeah, we literally to this day we cannot believe that. Just imagine like the owner of the company comes on and be like, Messiah, you got screwed. Championship leather screwed me. I would have had a new belt for you. So it's like almost like, so this belt isn't good enough anymore.
Yeah.
You gotta. What happened to championship leather? Yeah, such a bad I don't know, for the biggest show of the year too. Such a bad time to do that. Who gives a shit? Did anybody else think about that you having a new world title?
If I remember right, like I had no idea he ordered a new belt either. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I was expecting something new. Yeah.
What a nut job. It's like nobody knew about not even the champion knew he was getting a new belt. So he has to bring it up and bury them on the biggest show of the year. But it really just made him, really just buried him, really.
Knowing Johnny didn't care. Yeah.
It's just funny, like looking back at like just the names that went through CZW though. I mean, even like if you look at TV today, Eddie Kingston wrestled there a bunch.
Yeah.
I mean, like a bunch of guys. So CZW, for as crazy as it's known as, and Zandig being nuts, it was kind of a breeding ground for a lot of top guys throughout the years, and even still to this day.
Yeah, I mean, if I believe I'm correct in saying this, but like Kevin Owens, El Generico, or Sami Zayn, like. Yep. I believe CZW was the first American promotion they ever wrestled in.
Either them or JAPW, but it was very close, definitely.
Yeah, and then from there, it's like, hey, they go to Pro Wrestling Guerrilla and things like that. And CZW was, a lot of great talent stopped through CZW. I got to like wrestle with guys like I don't think I ever wrestled Sami Zayn, but I got to wrestle like. I got to wrestle. I want to say Steen, but I got to wrestle Kevin Owens. Yep. And I got to wrestle Eddie Kingston. Like, it's great to see these guys doing so well, especially on like the biggest stage that you can be on, and being one of like the biggest stars. It's awesome, and I mean, it would kind of be nice if because I know like John Moxley will give props to CZW every now and then. A lot of the other guys really don't say anything. And again, I don't think that's because they don't like CZW. It's just because, they're doing whatever. CZW was just a stop for them to go to another promotion, whether it was Ring of Honor, then Ring of Honor to, WWE. So, but it'd be nice if they gave the props to CZW a little bit more, only because, CZW took chances on those guys. And, ultimately it paid off, and it was great. It was trying to think who else came through there. I can't. Damn it! I'm so bad at this stuff.
Chris Hero.
Yeah, well, Chris Hero.
Claudio.
Claudio came through. Chris Hero. Like Jimmy Rave came through.
Yep. Ruckus.
Ruckus. I know. Like even Teddy Hart. Was part of those three. If you look at the documentary, or if you ever see him, he has like these 3 Freddy Krueger like scratches in the back of his head. Yep. Zandig gave that to him.
Of course.
Zandig like threw him through like tack strips or something, or hit him with tack strips, and it just scratched the back of his head. It was great. I look back at that time, with a lot of fond memories, and I just wish I took the time to appreciate it more, and took the time to actually, like, whatever pictures were taken, or T-shirts that were made for me. Or wish I had that. So I never took that. I always thought that was being a mark. Don't be a mark for yourself. Like Trent Astor would always go, "Don't be a mark for yourself." He'd call me Mark Saya, and it was like, so I would never take the time to collect those things, and took the time to appreciate everything that was going around. I wish I had done that a little bit more, though.
So as we head towards the finish here, we'll wind it down. Do you have some favorite like opponents, like through the years, just guys, even guys we didn't mention or guys you wouldn't think of that you just loved working with throughout the years?
I loved working with Sabu because I learned so much from him. In my eyes, when I watch the first match I ever had with Sabu to like the last I had, I can definitely see a difference in my confidence level and how I worked. Because the first match I ever had with Sabu, he just chewed me up and spit me out. I think I got like 2 moves in, and it wasn't because he wasn't letting me get my chance in or anything like that. It was just I was too green and too nervous to take those chances. Working someone like Sick Nick Mondo, I always had great matches with Sick Nick Mondo. Didn't matter where it was, if it was here on the West Coast or back east for CZW. Always enjoyed working him. Justice Payne as well. Because had I not had the match that I had with Justice Payne in my first match in CZW, I never would have been brought back. Because it was a one-off. It was a one and done. Let's bring in the XPW heavyweight champion, or the X heavyweight champion, and have our champion, go over on him. So it makes complete sense. And I knew why I was brought in, but I'm proud of that match with Payne from the standpoint of, if I go back and watch it, again, I can nitpick things and go, oh, I shouldn't have done that or whatever. I do that with any match I've ever had. But for 2 guys who had never met each other, literally met each other that morning, to go out there and have the chemistry that we had and put on the match that we had, I thought, I was very proud of that. Because like the night before, when I was brought into CZW, I knew nothing about CZW, aside from that they used a weed whacker, because I would see it in the aftermags and things like that. But I didn't have a computer. It wasn't like I was going online and looking at message boards and stuff. I had no idea. And when I was brought into CZW, that night I stayed at Nick Gage and Justice Payne's house. Because they lived together, they were brothers. But Payne was like, it was like his girlfriend's birthday, so he wasn't around. But I asked Nikki, I said, hey, do you have any video on Payne? And he said, yeah. So he gave me a bunch of video, and I just watched, the first tape I put in was Cage Death 3. I was only going to watch the Justice Payne match, but I ended up watching the whole entire event, and I was blown away at the event. Like, holy crap. Like, all these guys are really good workers. Like, what the hell do they want with me? And then I watched a couple other matches of Payne so I could get a feel for his style and what he would do. And so that when we did eventually meet and go over what we wanted to do, I knew how to work with them. And, again, for 2 guys who never met each other, to put on the kind of match that we had, I was very, very proud of that. And, I'm always proud of, like, when I got to wrestle Supreme in XPW, we had the one match at the one death match at Go Funk Yourself, and I'm extremely proud of that match because he and I put a lot of thought into that match. And when I would do death matches, Zanny would call it hack and slash. Like, he'd always say, like, IWA does hack and slash. Essentially, I pick up light tubes, I throw light tubes at you. You pick up barbed wire board, you hit me with it. There was no teasing, essentially. And, Supreme and I, or when I would wrestle Mondo, we would tease things, whether it would be setting up a table in this corner, and then whatever that we don't hit the table, but the fans forget about this table. We go off doing this thing, and then something happens where here I go through the table, but they had completely forgot about it. Just teasing things. I always like teasing things. And with Supreme, he and I could do those things. And what's funny is if I go back, the last time I ever watched the Go Funk Yourself match, that was the first match I can distinctly remember thinking to myself, damn, I'm tired. Like, why am I so tired? I don't get tired. And it's because I'm up setting up everything. I'm running around everywhere while he's selling in the ring after whatever I did, but I'm setting up this table over here. I'm setting up this out here. I'm just running around everywhere. But I always enjoyed wrestling Supreme because it was easy to do it. And he was down to do anything. Same as Mondo. Those would be the guys. And I would say that the first match I ever had with a name guy was Chris Candido. And I was shitting bricks with that. But he took care of me so well and guided me along through that match. I'm extremely proud of that match. Again, I can watch it now and just nitpick everything. But I distinctly remember there was a moment in the match. Because, again, it wasn't like I had been wrestling for 5 or 6 years and then I was in XPW. I wrestled for essentially 2 years for Slammers, but we didn't do anything. We didn't go anywhere. I was wrestling like the same 3 dudes or 4 dudes. And when I got to XPW, that's when guys like Candido and Sabu, they were there. And I remember my trainer, Carlos, one time, I forgot what we were going over, whether it was my punches, because like I said before, he said I punch like a pussy. But he said, what I'm telling you isn't going to make sense. It doesn't make sense now, but it will. You'll have a moment where, this aha moment where it's just like, oh, now I understand. And I had one of those moments with Candido. He had me in a corner and he was throwing punches at me at my forehead. And I mean, he was barely hitting me, but he looked like he was just demolishing me. But I was selling back, like hitting my hand. I was putting my whole body into it. And I remember thinking, oh, I get it now. Like I things were starting to click for me during that match. And to be able to have a guy like Candido then, essentially, I mean, he was holding my hand throughout the match, because Rob said, Candido said I was a good listener. Same thing with Sabu. I listened well, which is a big deal. It really is a big deal to be able to listen. I mean, it sounds stupid and convoluted, but when you're wrestling somebody who has way more experience than you, just listen. All you got to do is listen, man. A lot of guys don't do that. They don't listen because they want to be able to do their spinning 450 and this and whatever it is. But just listen. And I've always looked back at that match very fondly just because of him taking care of me and just having like these epiphanies of, oh, I'm getting it now. I'm getting it.
That's pretty damn cool, though, to be able to work with guys like Candido and Sabu and them compliment you. So, I mean, that's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, no, I'm when I look down, bottom line, I just wanted to be a pro wrestler. I wanted to wrestle. I didn't care if it was in front of 5 people or 5 million, whatever. I just wanted to do what I saw my hero, like Bret Hart, doing. I grew up loving Bret Hart. I wanted to be like Bret Hart. And to then be able to have the opportunity to wrestle guys like Candido and Sabu and, these guys. And even like I learned stuff from New Jack as well, just be able to learn. And actually the one thing you hear a lot of is like these legends will come into a locker room with all this young talent. And the legend will say, like, dude, no one asked me any questions. No one said anything. No one asked me, hey, can you watch my match? I think it's a disservice. Like, dude, you ask these guys, they want to be asked questions, man. They do. Like, take advantage of it. And I understand sometimes it's not necessarily thinking like I know better than him, or I don't need to know anything else, but maybe you're just too shy. You don't want to bug the person, but dude, take advantage of it. They're there. And it's just been my experience that, they want to impart this wisdom or this constructive criticism or whatever you want to call it. They want to tell you these things. Just, have open ears and, have the balls to actually go up and ask, because they'll tell you. Just take advantage of it. That's the biggest advice I can give to anybody, because I always get asked about, like, what advice can you give me? Just take advantage. You always work with people that are better than you. Know that you don't know everything. And you're never going to know everything. If you think you're going to know everything, then you're in the wrong business. Because even now, even though I haven't wrestled in however many years, like, I'll watch something online or I'll see something and it's like, oh, wow, that's cool. I like how they did that. Or, always learn it. Just always be learning.
Nice. So what's next, though, as far as wrestling or maybe anything? What's next? Maybe we'll see you pop up on TV again, or what's next for you?
What's next for me? I'm going to get off with you and probably get chewed out by my wife because I asked her to leave. That's probably what's next. Honestly, like wrestling wise, I don't know. Never say never. I might do something again. I just don't want to stink up the joint. I have too much respect for the business and the workers, the girls and the guys. And I told myself long ago, like, if I can't do what I expect myself to do or what people have seen me do in the past, I'm not going to do it. Because I just feel like I'm stealing that. It's just a disservice. And I'm lucky enough I'm not in a position where I need to go, make $100 or whatever it is. I'm lucky that way. I just, I wish I had a definitive answer for you. I don't know what's next for me regarding wrestling. I enjoy sitting down doing podcasts and talking. But as far as getting back in the ring, I'd like to say yes to doing it one day, hopefully, but I honestly don't know.
So do you have social media, anything out there? Like, do you promote yourself at all, or not really? You don't really do social media and stuff?
I mean, I have social media. There's nothing. I mean, if you want to see pictures of my kids, that's basically what.
No wrestling social media, though.
Yeah, no wrestling social media.
Oh.
I mean, you can probably find me at Billy Messiah on like Facebook and Instagram. Every now and then I pop up stuff wrestling wise, but again, I've just become one of those doting dads who is always putting up photos of his kids, kind of thing, and my beautiful wife and. I mean, that's me. Sorry. I mean, I marvel at the guys who do the Twitter and cause I have no Twitter, but like who do Twitter, Facebook, who are able to promote themselves. Cause I've had discussions with guys when I've gone to shows about how they, monetize everything. And like, dude, you can actually make wrestling, work in the indies if you know what you're doing, whether it's through your merch and all, like, this stuff wasn't around when I was wrestling. And honestly, had it been, I am too lazy. I'm too lazy to do any of this crap.
Yeah.
But like the guys who do it, my hat's off to them, man. Cause, I think it's awesome that you guys can work the indies now and actually make a living doing it. I think that's awesome. Cause when I was working the indies, as much as I was working, I still had a shoot job. I was still doing, my real job on the side. I was never, whether it was, I never had the balls or the guts to actually say, I'm quitting this job. I'm doing pro wrestling full time. I just never did it. So I always had like a real job to go to that would allow me to, take off at a moment's notice and I could go fly over to wherever to go do a show.
Right.
So.
Billy, thank you so much for all the time. The Messiah. Appreciate all the time today. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Sean. I appreciate having me on. And sorry it took me so long to get on, but I appreciate it, man. If you ever want to talk again, just let me know, man.